Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Authorities in Kenosha County, Wisconsin say that a 37-year-old fugitive is successfully in custody this week following a bizarre incident in which he led police on a brief high-speed chase in a limousine. The incident began at around 4 p.m. on September 16th when an officer from Wisconsin's Prairie Police Department spotted a driver behaving strangely on the road. The man was behind the wheel of a white limo and was traveling well under the speed limit. After noticing a registration violation with the vehicle, the officer attempted to conduct a traffic stop. That's when the driver, later identified as 37-year-old Bradley Semmerich, sped off. Dashcam and body cam footage that was released this week shows parts of the strange and short-lived chase that followed. In it, Semmerich can allegedly be seen driving recklessly down the road, at one point blowing past a school bus that has its lights flashing, indicating that children are about to cross. Moments later, the 37-year-old attempts to pass another car by driving onto the shoulder of the road, only to lose control and crash into a ditch. Though this disabled the limo, Semmerich still apparently wasn't willing to give up without a fight. He ran off into some nearby woods, where he reportedly had to be restrained multiple times and at one point bit an officer. He was finally taken into custody when backup arrived at the scene. Following Semmerich's arrest, police say they found methamphetamine in the limo, as well as other items suggesting that the 37-year-old had also been dealing drugs. They also discovered that Semmerich was a convicted felon with multiple warrants out for his arrest. At the time of this recording, charges are still pending in connection with this week's incident.
Authorities in Alameda County, California released a chilling update in an ongoing murder case last week, announcing that after more than a year they had arrested the victim's girlfriend in connection with the crime, who they now say fabricated a story about a home invasion in order to cover up her actions. The situation began on May 1st, 2023, when police were called about a violent situation at an apartment near the corner of Owens and Rosewood Drives in the city of Pleasanton. Officers arrived to find a 27-year-old woman named Kennedy Stith, who said that she and her boyfriend, 32-year-old Davian White, had been the victims of a home invasion. White was inside the apartment suffering from a knife wound to the chest. Sadly, he was pronounced dead at the scene. Stith told police that she and Davian had been together at home when two men wearing ski masks broke inside. She claimed that she was held at gunpoint in the kitchen while the second suspect attacked Davian in the living room with a knife. She had only been able to contact the police after the intruders had fled. Initially, it seems that investigators believe Stith's story. In large part, this appears to be because she also provided a possible motive behind the home invasion. She explained that she believed it was part of a dispute over drugs, as Davian had been selling magic mushrooms and marijuana prior to his murder. However, as more time began to pass, authorities began to notice inconsistencies in this version of events. For starters, when officers arrived at the crime scene, Davian's body was in the doorway near the entrance to the apartment. This obviously contradicted what Stith had said about him being attacked in the living room, but it also would have made it difficult for anyone to leave the unit because his body was blocking the way. On top of this, Stith reportedly grew less and less cooperative as time went on. She not only failed to show up to a scheduled interview after giving her initial statement, she also never followed up to check up on the investigation. Davian's friends and family told police that they were pretty sure they knew why. They believed that Stith was directly involved in what had happened. Loved ones explained that Davian and Stith frequently argued about money and that she was, quote, manipulative, abusive, and controlling. They also stated that she hadn't told the full truth about Davian's drug dealing. This was apparently something Stith forced him to do to pay their bills, and she had allegedly threatened him before. This actually aligned with something else police had noticed. During the initial 911 call, Stith had referred to what had happened as a domestic dispute. It was only after officers arrived at the scene that she had told them the story about the home invasion. On September 12, 2024, Stith was arrested and has now been charged with murder. At the time of this recording, she remains in custody.
Representatives from the Vermont State Police say that a 22-year-old man is facing charges after he allegedly gunned down his own father and two other family members inside of their home late last week. The case began sometime on the morning of September 15th when police received calls about a suspicious person. The concerned callers told authorities that they had seen a man walking around near the town of Pawlet who appeared to have blood on him. Though reporting on the incident is a little unclear, it appears that around this same time the man who police had been called about also contacted authorities himself. That man, 22-year-old Brian Crossman Jr., told police he would meet them outside of Wells Village Middle School. When officers arrived, Crossman explained that he had been staying at his father's house over on Route 133, but that he had briefly gone out for a walk. He claimed he returned a little while ago and discovered that someone had attacked his father, stepmother, and stepbrother. After responding to the home, Vermont State Police found a grisly crime scene waiting for them. Inside, they found the bodies of 46-year-old Brian Crossman Sr., his 41-year-old wife Erica Pelusiak Crossman, and her 13-year-old son Colin Taft. All three of the victims had died from multiple gunshot wounds. Very quickly, police said that the details of Crossman Jr.'s story did not match what they had discovered at the scene. They now allege that the 22-year-old was the one responsible for the killings, and that they likely took place sometime the day before they were alerted. At the time of this recording, no information about a possible motive has been confirmed, though local news sources have reported that Crossman Jr. had a troubled relationship with his father. The 22-year-old also apparently had a learning disability, a history of mental health issues, and had displayed aggressive behavior in the past. Crossman Sr. was a local government official with the Pawlet Select Board. He and Erica were only married this past June, and had been working on cleaning up and working the family farm that had been in Crossman's family for generations. Crossman Jr. was formally arrested and charged with 3 counts of aggravated murder on September 20th, and at the time of this recording remains in custody.
Authorities in Essex County, Massachusetts say that an elderly landlord is facing a number of charges this week following a strange housing dispute in which he allegedly drove a piece of heavy machinery into one of his own cabins because he didn't like the person he was renting to. The whole thing started sometime on the evening of September 14th when police were called about a dangerous situation on a property in the town of Salisbury. The place was owned by 77-year-old John Sanborn, who lived there and also rented out some smaller cabins on his land. When officers arrived, they discovered that one of these cabins had been pushed roughly 3 to 5 feet off of its foundation. The site was pretty wild, but the story behind it was even crazier. Sanborn told police that he was unhappy with the people he rented that particular cabin to and said that it was because of the amount of drugs they were bringing onto his property. What he apparently neglected to mention was that he had rammed the cabin with a front-wheel loader while his tenants were inside. The woman who rents the cabin, who has reportedly been living there for the last 18 months, stated that Sanborn became irate that evening when he saw her boyfriend there. About 15 minutes later, she said she was lying down inside when she felt a large crash, which was allegedly the impact from the construction vehicle slamming into the home. Due to the damage, the place has now been deemed too dangerous to enter. While police haven't weighed in on any of Sanborn's claims about his tenants' drug use, they have alleged that he was breaking some laws of his own. During a search of his nearby farm property, they seized a loaded handgun and several rifles, which they say were being stored improperly. The 77-year-old has now been charged with 2 counts of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, disorderly conduct, and improper storage of a firearm. Following his release after arraignment, Sanborn was questioned by local media about what had happened, but apparently wasn't feeling very chatty. When asked about whether a piece of construction equipment had gone into the cabin, he responded, quote, "Well, I guess there is a possibility." He refused to elaborate, though, telling reporters, quote, "You ain't going to get a story." Unfortunately for Sanborn, it appears that he was wrong. The 77-year-old has been ordered to stay away from his tenants and is due back in court in October.
Representatives from the NYPD say that an accused killer is in custody this week, thanks in large part to a helpful accident. According to reports, the whole thing started sometime on the evening of September 17th when a couple of officers spotted a man drinking an open container of alcohol in public. They went over and were in the middle of giving him a citation when they ran the man's name and were alarmed by what they found. The man in question was 37-year-old Jarrell Scholes, and he was wanted in connection with a senseless murder that had taken place earlier this summer. On the night of June 23rd, Scholes allegedly brutally attacked a 54-year-old man named Ramon Cruz. At the time, Ramon was sleeping on a sidewalk in the Bronx's Mott Haven neighborhood and had apparently done nothing to provoke the 37-year-old. Despite this, Scholes stormed up to him and, according to court documents, quote, repeatedly and forcefully punched the victim in the head with clothes fixed while the victim laid on the ground, directly striking the victim's head and also causing the victim's head to repeatedly strike the hard ground. It appears that because Ramon was initially taken to the hospital in stable condition, Scholes was not held in custody. However, a couple of days later, Ramon began suffering seizures and slipped into a coma. Sadly, he passed away on July 17th, with doctors determining his cause of death was from complications directly related to the attack. At the end of that month, a warrant was put out for Scholes' arrest on murder charges. However, his last known address was all the way in Minnesota and was clearly out of date. A photo of the 54-year-old was put out in the hopes that the public might be able to tip police off, though it wasn't until this week, with the coincidental citation for drinking in public, that he was finally caught. Scholes now remains in custody on murder and manslaughter charges. Though the 37-year-old has no criminal record in New York, according to reports, he has 9 prior convictions in Minnesota. Incidentally, one of those is also for having an open container of alcohol in public.
A Florida man reportedly found himself in quite the bizarre situation this week after he found a would-be thief trapped inside of his luxury vehicle, and the culprit was caught on footage simultaneously begging for help while also pretending he'd done nothing wrong. The whole thing started sometime on the morning of September 16th, when the victim, Julio Solano, walked into the parking garage where he had left his Corvette in Miami Beach. Julio had just finished having breakfast nearby and was completely unprepared for what happened next. As soon as he walked into the garage, he said the attendant flagged him down and told him that someone was in his vehicle. At first, he thought it was a joke. However, moments later, he saw a man who appeared to be ducking down and hiding inside the driver's seat of his Corvette. Julio contacted police, though while he waited for them to arrive, he decided to confront the man. He also pulled out his phone and started recording. It's a good thing he did, because the interaction was pretty unbelievable. After walking up to his car, Julio asked the man, later identified as 33-year-old Ravesh Rabindranath, what he was doing. Rabindranath tried to play it cool. He claimed that he was actually the owner of the car and acted like he wasn't doing anything wrong. That led to the following bizarre exchange.
My brother, this is not your car, this is my car. But why are you in my car? No, you can't get out, because we calling the cops. What do you mean for what? This is Grand Theft Auto. I don't know what, are you trying to steal my car? What are you doing? No, that has nothing to do with nothing, bro. Bro, so just, what were you doing in my car?
As you just heard, Rabindranath was all over the place. While he still sort of seemed like he was pretending to own the vehicle, he was also clearly trapped inside and wanted help getting out. Strangely, he also acted confused when Julio said he was calling the police. When officers arrived, Rabindranath was immediately arrested. Speaking about the wild incident with local media afterwards, Julio stated he had no idea how Rabindranath got inside his car, but that without the key, none of the vehicle's electrical components would have worked. There is a manual door release under the seat, but the 33-year-old didn't know about this because, it wasn't his car. Rabindranath has now been charged with burglary to an unoccupied conveyance. He has since been released on a $2,500 bond.
Authorities in Birmingham, Alabama say that they're on the hunt for multiple suspects this week following a terrifying shooting outside of a local nightlife spot that left 4 people dead and well over a dozen others injured. The incident took place on the night of September 21st in Birmingham's 5 Points South neighborhood. The area is a well-known entertainment district and, like most Saturdays, was packed with university students and other young people who had gone to hang out at the many busy restaurants and bars. Shortly after 11 p.m., a line of people were outside of the Hush Hookah Bar while waiting to get in when a car pulled up and multiple people got out. They were armed with guns and proceeded to open fire on the crowd. Victims and witnesses ran for their lives in the resulting chaos, with bystanders saying they saw people doing whatever they could to take cover and get out of the line of fire. However, many were not so lucky. When police responded to the scene, they found 3 people lying on the sidewalk unresponsive. They were pronounced dead, as was the fourth victim shortly after they were rushed to a local hospital. A further 17 people were wounded, with authorities stating some had suffered life-threatening injuries. So far, only 3 of the deceased victims have been identified as 21-year-old Anitra Holloman, 27-year-old Taj Booker, and 27-year-old Carlos McCain. According to investigators, what made the shooting particularly deadly and disturbing is the fact that the culprits are believed to have equipped their weapons with so-called machine gun conversion devices. These are illegal mechanisms that can be put on some firearms to override the trigger so that they function as automatic weapons. As a result, though the shooting apparently only lasted a few moments, authorities say they recovered more than 100 shell casings from the scene. At the time of this recording, police say that they are still investigating the devastating situation and that no arrests have yet been made. That being said, they have stated that they believe the shooting was a targeted attack on one person and may have been a hired hit. Some reports state that the target of the attack is believed to be among the deceased victims, though no actual motive behind the crime has been shared. The situation is still developing.
Representatives from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York announced a major update in the case against rapper Sean Combs this week, announcing that after months of investigation and ongoing civil lawsuits, they had arrested the disgraced music mogul and accused him of running a criminal enterprise involved in sex trafficking and other disturbing offenses. The arrest took place on September 16th at a hotel in Manhattan. It comes after a tidal wave of allegations against Combs, who is better known by his artist name P. Diddy. For those who have not been following the story closely, the whole thing started back in late November of last year, when Combs was the subject of a lawsuit filed by his former partner, R&B singer and dancer Cassandra "Cassie" Ventura. Ventura filed the lawsuit under the New York Adult Survivors Act, alleging that she had suffered years of abuse at the hands of the hip-hop icon. Specifically, Ventura claimed that she had been trafficked, raped, and beaten by Combs on numerous occasions over a period of 10 years. Though this lawsuit was settled almost immediately after it was filed, the disturbing nature of the accusations quickly generated a ton of media coverage. Things only got more concerning when now infamous surveillance footage was circulated, which appeared to corroborate some of Ventura's claims. In the footage, which was recorded inside of a Los Angeles hotel in March of 2016, Combs can be seen chasing Ventura down a hallway as she runs towards a set of elevators. Combs proceeds to brutally attack the singer before attempting to drag her back to his hotel room. Combs put out a video a couple of days after the footage emerged, apologizing and stating that he took full responsibility for his actions. However, his attempts to paint the situation as a one-off incident that had since been settled were challenged when a slew of other allegations and lawsuits began to come out against him. We don't have time to go over each one of these allegations individually, given the scope of this video. However, many of them followed a similar pattern. They involved both men and women claiming that they had been subjected to physical and sexual abuse by Combs, crimes that were allegedly facilitated and enabled by his wealth and celebrity status. As disturbing as all of this is, it's important to point out that at the beginning, all of the complaints and legal action taken against the rapper were civil in nature. However, there were signs that that was beginning to change as early as March of this year, when federal agents raided 2 of Combs' houses in Los Angeles and Miami. We now know that these raids were part of a criminal investigation into Combs, one that has now resulted in accusations that he operated an illicit enterprise involved in sex trafficking and other offenses. An indictment that was unsealed the day after Combs' arrest revealed that he had been charged with sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution. The indictment specifically states in part, quote, "For decades, the defendant abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, Combs relied on the employees, resources, and influences of the multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice." By far the allegation that has garnered the most attention since the news broke, though, concerns events that Combs held, which he reportedly referred to as freak-offs. These were private parties where the rapper allegedly lured and coerced victims into engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. The victims were allegedly plied with drugs and alcohol to ensure their compliance, and their actions were recorded. According to prosecutors, Combs, quote, used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims, and the indictment alleges that he maintained control over the victims in several ways, including by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunities, by monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance. At the time of this recording, Combs remains in custody and has been denied bail. He and his lawyers have vehemently denied any wrongdoing, with Combs stating that he would, quote, fight for my name, my family, and for the truth. If convicted of the charges against him, authorities say he could be facing decades in prison. The situation is still developing. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.